Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Surprised by Her by Chelsea M. Cameron, narrated by Mary Helen Gallucci. Chapter 1. "Good morning," I said in my cheerful customer service voice. I'd perfected it over the past few years working retail, and it was going to be in full force this week. Sydney, my boss and manager, was currently lounging on a beach with her gorgeous girlfriend, and I was just hoping nothing went wrong. Since it was only Monday, I had a lot of hours to go. A few people came into the shop, and I made my presence known, but not too aggressively. They seemed like they were just killing time, so I let them do their thing and did my best not to hover. The door opened again, and in walked a woman who was so tall, I couldn't help but stare. She definitely wasn't from around here. I had only lived in Arrowbridge for 5 months, but I'd never seen anyone who looked like her. Her hair was so blonde, it was almost white, cut short on the sides and longer on top, and carefully styled so she was both glam and butch at the same time. Icy blue eyes scanned the shop and then stopped when they found me. "Good morning," I said, my voice barely audible. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Good morning. Can I help you?" She stepped closer, and I took in her dark blue short-sleeve button-down, black slacks, and boat shoes. Tall. So freaking tall. I was only just above 5 feet, so to me most people were tall, but she was taller. She finally spoke. "I'm looking for a gift." Her voice was rich, too, expensive and cultured. Definitely not from here. "We have all kinds of gift items. Maybe I can help you choose something?" I asked. This was one of the best parts of my job. Second only to packing the perfect box, for some reason. She flicked her eyes over my lavender hair, which sometimes people couldn't hide their disapproval about. With her, I only caught a little surprise before she went back to walking around the shop. "I think I can handle it on my own," she said. I sighed inwardly. Damn, she was probably going to leave without buying anything. One of my goals this week was to sell as many things as I possibly could to show Sydney and her mom, Eileen, who was also technically my boss, that I was good at my job. They'd given me a chance, and I wanted to show them it had been worth it. "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" I asked. Some days Arrowbridge locals would come in just to grab a free cup, but actual customers loved it too, even though it was June and most people wanted iced drinks. "Sure," she said, picking up a mug and studying the design on it before setting it back down. There were silver rings on nearly every one of her fingers. The other people who'd been wandering around left, so it was just her and me in the main part of the shop, with Eileen out back painting mugs and listening to music on her headphones. I filled a cup with black coffee and grabbed some creamer packets and a stirring stick, as well as a cup sleeve and a napkin. "Here you are," I said, going to hand her the cup, but I bumped her hand as she reached, and the cup ended up spilling all over her front. She jumped back, but some of the coffee had doused her shirt and pants. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" I said, dropping everything. "I'm so sorry! Fuck, are you okay?" "Where's the bathroom?" she asked, and I pointed. Her legs were so long that she made it to the bathroom quicker than I did, and I stood there as she turned on the sink and started dousing herself with water. Immediately, my thoughts went to panic. What if I'd burned her? Was she going to sue the store? There was no way that Sydney had enough money to pay for a lawsuit, and then the business was going to go under and I'd be out of a job. She cursed a few times under her breath and then unbuttoned her shirt and pulled it off, revealing a white tank top with a beige bra underneath. "Are you okay?" I asked again as she pulled up the shirt to reveal an absolutely ripped stomach. I'd never seen abs like that up close before. Her skin was red in spots from where it had been splashed by the coffee. "Fuck," I said, starting to really panic. Why had I given her coffee? Why couldn't I have just left her alone and ogled her from afar? Why did shit like this always seem to happen to me? "Let me help you," I said, searching for any way I could salvage the situation. I grabbed some towels and wetted them with water and started pressing them against her stomach. Strong hands took a hold of my wrists and stopped me. I looked up, way up, into her face. "I'm okay," she said. "Nothing a washing machine can't fix." "But your skin is all red," I said. "It's fine," she said, pushing my hands away. Oh, shit. Now I'd fucked up even worse by putting my hand all over her abs. Beautiful women made me lose my mind. Exhibit 1000. "I'm so sorry," I said. "It was an accident," she said, letting go of my hands. "No harm done." Her mouth kicked up in the briefest of smiles. "I'm still sorry," I said. "Are you sure you're not burned?" "The coffee wasn't that hot," she said. "No permanent damage." "Oh," I said. "Good." She continued to look down at me as I held the dripping towels in my hands, unable to break my gaze from hers. I opened my mouth to say something else, but then I couldn't because she had kissed me. The towels fell from my grasp as the stranger shoved me against the sink and ravaged my mouth. What was happening? In the moments it took me to register that I was being kissed by this very tall and very hot stranger, my instincts took over and I was kissing her back, trying to push myself up to be as tall as I could to get closer to her. That mouth was surprisingly soft and lush and demanding. She attacked me, but it was a coordinated attack, targeted, as if she knew exactly what she wanted and was going to do whatever it took to get it. One moment I was struggling to stand, and the next she had picked me up and set me on the sink. I yelped a little at the coldness of the marble, but she just swallowed the sound and slid her tongue into my mouth. This woman was relentless, and I wasn't sure if I would even survive it. She was so much, too much, but I only craved more. Whatever she wanted to give me, I would take it. Just as abruptly as the kiss started, it stopped. My eyes fluttered open, and I found myself staring deep into those blue eyes. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. Slowly, she stood back to her full height, gazing down at me. She brushed her thumb across my mouth once. "Let's just keep that between us," she said, and I found myself nodding. Honestly, I would have agreed to anything she asked of me. Anything. My entire body was still on fire from the kiss, and my knees wobbled as I tried to hop gracefully down from the sink and stumbled. She picked up her coffee-soaked shirt and buttoned it with more finesse than I'd ever had in my entire life, before opening the door and leaving the bathroom. I followed clumsily after her, trying to find something to say, but failing. She made it to the door and paused, giving me one last look over her shoulder. The intensity in her eyes pinned me to the spot and took my breath away. "Have a nice day," I gasped as she pushed through the door and walked down the street. "Have a nice day?" I repeated to myself over and over the rest of the afternoon. What the hell was that? I could have said anything else, should have said anything else. It couldn't have been possible to die from embarrassment because I would have expired that afternoon from replaying the morning over and over in my mind. I knew I was obsessing, and I needed to break the mental cycle, but I couldn't stop. Somehow I made it through the rest of the day without making a further fool of myself, and it was a huge relief to lock the door and turn off the lights and say goodbye to Eileen. She'd been in the back making pottery the entire time and had no idea about the coffee spilling or the kiss, and I wasn't going to tell her about it. I stopped at the grocery store to pick up a few things and headed home, feeling the tension melt off my shoulders. I always felt better when I pulled into my driveway. Safe. I was safe now. My parents had only owned the house for 6 months, but that didn't matter. It was home. The farmhouse was built in the 1800s and renovated about 5 years ago, but it retained so much of the charm of the original house, with carved wooden banisters, stone fireplaces, and pretty little windows with stained glass. My favorite part, though, was the porch swing, where I spent a lot of time sitting and drinking coffee and reading. "Hey," I called as I walked through the door and back to the kitchen to set down the groceries. "How was your day?" a voice behind me said as I opened the fridge. I turned around and found my mom with her arms out for a hug. "Fine," I lied through my teeth as she hugged me. "Hey, Mama." My other mother came out of her office and approached me for a hug as well. "You sure it was fine?" Mom asked, tugging some of my hair behind my ears. "Uh-huh," I said, nodding a little too vigorously and then pushing my glasses back up my nose. They shared a look. One of those parental looks that spoke 1,000 words, but in only a language they could understand. Mama put her arm around Mom and leaned into her. Visually, they didn't seem to go together. Mom had played softball and had her gray hair cut short and only wore clothes from the LL Bean outlet store. Mama's hair was long and dark brown, and she always did something pretty with it. She sold real estate, so she had a closet full of suits and pencil skirts and pretty dresses. But the second she got home, it was off with the work clothes and on with the matching sweat set and her old fuzzy socks. "It was a great day," I said with false enthusiasm. The two of them just waited. They knew I'd crumble sooner or later. I always did. "Okay, fine. I have never been more embarrassed in my life," I said, leaning down and resting my forehead on the counter. "What happened?" Mama asked, rubbing my back in soothing motions. "I was getting coffee for this customer and spilled it all over her," I said, cutting myself off before I could tell them that the customer had kissed the hell out of me after. That part was going with me to the grave. "Oh, sweetie, I'm sure they know it was an accident," Mama said. I stood up and could feel my face blazing. Normally, I told the two of them just about everything, but I couldn't tell them this. My therapist and I had been working on me setting better boundaries with them. I was a grown woman and didn't need to tell my parents every single detail of my life. Easier said than done, though. "I know, but it was still mortifying," I said. They both hugged me and then helped me with the rest of the groceries, as Mom told me about her day. She was the PE teacher at Hartford High School, and I could always count on her to tell me funny stories about her students. So then I said that filming dances to post online doesn't count as exercise, and they were really upset about that. "I gave them the choice of basketball, badminton, or jump rope," she said, as Mama cut up chicken for stir-fry. "I can't believe people are still playing badminton," I said. "It seems so old-fashioned." Mom shrugged. "It's easy to set up the nets, and it doesn't require a ton of expensive equipment or athletic prowess." "I wasn't good at it," I mumbled. "You were fine. It's just not your sport," Mom said, slinging her arm around my shoulder. "What is my sport?" I asked, going through all of the sports I had tried and failed in my life. Mom thought about that for a second. "I don't think we've found it yet." "That's a nice way of saying I suck," I said, slicing through a tomato. "Hey, don't talk about my daughter that way," Mama said, touching my back. The three of us settled into our usual dinner routine and then cuddled together on the couch to watch our favorite show. It wasn't that I didn't want to have a social life or make friends. It was just really hard. A year ago, I'd been living in my own apartment a few states away and working remotely doing random jobs, and I'd managed to isolate myself so completely that I barely left the apartment. My lease had been up, and my parents had just bought the house and said I could come and have the entire third floor of the house to myself, with a gorgeous bathroom and big tub, and I could relax and stop worrying about paying rent and just take a pause for a while. I hadn't been able to say no, even though there wasn't much in the way of a social scene in Arrowbridge. There were a lot of queer people, which was why my parents had looked at it as a potential place to move. The two of them had made tons of friends already, and had a much better social life than I could ever hope for. Sydney, my boss, had invited me to hang with her friends, but I hadn't been able to get up the nerve to do it yet. I'd flaked a few times, but she hadn't seemed offended when I canceled at the last minute, so I had hope that one day I could make it happen. After the show, I went upstairs and slid into my bathtub with a lavender bath bomb. "You'd better fix my life," I said to it as I dropped it into the water. No such luck, but it did help me relax a tiny bit. I couldn't stop thinking about the stranger and what the hell had possessed her to just kiss me like that. Was she the kind of person who walked around kissing people? Had she done it as a joke? Was it part of some viral internet trend I didn't know about? All kinds of possibilities flitted through my mind as I came up with increasingly more outlandish and truly mean reasons for her to have kissed me. If there was one sport I excelled at, it was jumping to the worst possible conclusion. Always. I was going to have a lot to talk about with my therapist this week. Chapter 2. I was jumpy for the next day at work. I couldn't stop waiting and expecting the stranger to come back and explain herself. Every time the door opened, I would flinch, and it was exhausting. Somehow I made it through the day, but it was rough. On Wednesday, a familiar face walked in with twin girls. "Hey," I said as Lane looked around and smiled when she saw me. The twins were glued to their phones and barely looked up. "Hey, how are you doing managing all this by yourself?" Lane was one of the kindest people I'd met. The only other one who was kinder was her friend Joy, who worked a few shops down the street at mainly books. I'd already spent way too much of my meager paycheck there on books since I'd moved here. "I'm surviving," I said, trying to laugh. "Hey, the place looks great, so that's something," she said, looking around. "We're out and about today, and I thought I'd check in." "Did Sydney ask you to?" I asked, a little suspicious. I didn't like the idea that Sydney would send her friends in to look in on me to make sure I wasn't fucking this up too badly. "No, she's too busy, I think," Lane said, "if you know what I mean." I snorted, thinking about how Sydney and Lark were like. "Oh, I know exactly what you mean." "Honor is trying not to check up on them too much, but Lark has barely texted her since they got to the island," Lane said, rolling her eyes. "One thing's for sure, everyone knows who the strict mom is going to be between the two of us. Not that we're ready for that. We need to get married first." Lane looked down at her sparkling ring and smiled. "Anyway, I actually have a reason for being here. Mark's niece, Ryan, is visiting for a few months, and I wanted to get her a little welcome gift, so I'm putting together a basket with lots of Arrowbridge things." Lane was too sweet. "What were you thinking?" I asked her. "She definitely needs a lobster mug," Lane said, grabbing one and setting it on the counter with the register. "2 mugs." She added another lobster mug to the other one. Lane fluttered around the shop, and I just let her do her thing as she added more items to her collection. The twins would look up every now and then and comment before going back to their phones. "They're at that age," Lane said as I rung her up. "I know they're bored and they want to be with their friends, but I miss when they were younger and they would talk my ears off." She sighed and shook her head. "Pretty soon they'll be dating and getting jobs and driving, and I'll be obsolete." I'm sorry, I said. That had to be hard, taking care of the kids their whole lives and then just being out of a job. Lane waved her hands. It's not your problem to worry about. Oh, I wanted to invite you over on Saturday. We are having a little party, partially to welcome Ryan, but also just because. The idea of a party made my stomach drop to my feet, and I could feel the excuses clamoring at the back of my throat. It was pure muscle memory to start giving excuses for why I couldn't come. Instead of what I always did, I swallowed those words and gave myself a second. The panic continued to ramp up, but I forced myself to speak. I'd love to, I gasped out, hiding my shaking hands behind my back. What time? Lane either didn't notice the chaos that was going on with me, or she pretended not to. Perfect. It's at 2, and you don't need to bring anything, just your purple-haired self, she said, grinning at me. Girls, say goodbye to Everly, Lane prompted. Bye, they said in perfect unison before waving, also exactly the same way. I'm starving, one of the twins said as they walked through the door. Me too, the other one said. Okay, let's get you some lunch, Lane said with a laugh. I might go to a party on Saturday, I announced to my parents when I got home from work that night and we sat on the couch watching our nightly shows. They shared a look of surprise. You are? Mama said slowly. I am, I said, nodding. Lane, Sydney's friend, invited me over for a little party Saturday at 2, and I'm going to go. I know I have book club tomorrow night, but I think I can do both. Sweetie, that's wonderful, Mom said, giving me a hug. Thanks, I said. Here's hoping I actually make it there. Agreeing to an event was the first step. Getting my ass there was the bigger challenge. You have your meds if you need them, and you have your list, Mama reminded me. I know, I said. My therapist and I had developed a list of things I could do that helped me get out of an anxiety spiral. That, in addition to my meds and other coping strategies, were my arsenal for fighting my brain when it acted up. I'm really proud of you, Mama said, kissing my temple. I'm proud of me, too, I said. That was something else I'd been working on. I think we should celebrate this, Mom said, getting up from the couch. I'm getting out the champagne. Mom, we don't need champagne, I said. But she was already heading to the kitchen with Mama on her heels. They were absolutely going to talk about me, but that was fine. Negative voices in my head wanted to tell me that agreeing to go to a party wasn't anything to celebrate, that I was a ridiculous loser who couldn't do normal things just like everyone else without having a panic attack. I closed my eyes and did some quick breathing exercises until Mom and Mama came back with the glasses of bubbly. Cheers, Mom said, and we all clinked our glasses together. We can make some dip for you to bring with you, Mama said. Lane told me that it was taken care of and I shouldn't bring anything. Besides, you're already making it for book club, I said. Oh, Mama said, her face falling. You can make us dip, Mom said, kissing her cheek. We'll have our own party. Mama's eyes lit up. We haven't done that in a long time. Anyone could see the spark between them, and I felt my face getting red as they kissed passionately. Okay, can you not be all like that in front of me? I said, and they both laughed. You know, when you get annoyed, that just makes us want to do it more, Mom said, her eyes gleaming. I stood up from the couch. Okay, it's time for me to go to my room and read. Good night, Mama sang before dissolving into giggles. Wait until I leave the room, I yelled, not turning around. You ready? Mama asked me as I grabbed the tray of dips she'd made that I was bringing with me to book club. Tonight I had roasted red pepper, tzatziki, and cowboy caviar, along with bags of chips. Someone else always brought a veggie tray, so that was already covered. I am, I said as I grabbed everything. I'll see you when I get back. Have fun, Mom called from the living room. I will, I said. Most social situations set off my anxiety, and book club was no exception. But this was my fourth one, and I knew the ropes by now. The group was low pressure, so I didn't feel the need to talk or have the spotlight on me, which helped a lot. Plus, we were talking about books, which was a whole lot easier than having to talk about myself or my life or anything super personal. This month's book was an older young adult book that was a gorgeous sapphic Cinderella retelling that I had already read lots of times, but was happy to read again. We read both old and new releases, so it was fun to go back to something that was a bit older and see it with fresh eyes. Everyone in the group was absolutely lovely, but I'd yet to make any really strong connections with people to hang out after book club. Right now, I was just getting used to being a part of the group and contributing what I could. Oh, and bringing the dip. I managed to make it to book club at a reasonable time, instead of almost an hour early like I had the first 2 times I'd come. That had been completely embarrassing, but I just pretended like I'd wanted to come early to help out if I could. Joy was the first person I saw, and she immediately took the tray with the dip bowls and the bags of chips from me. Sometimes in between meetings, I dream about these dips, she said. Is that weird? Joy had medium brown hair that fell straight down her back, and the kindest energy. I loved coming to the bookstore whenever I could, and she always found something new and interesting for me to read. I can ask for some of the recipes, but I don't think she's going to want to give them up, I said with a laugh. Joy tapped her chin as if she was thinking. What are you doing over here? You look like you're plotting, Ezra said, coming over. When I'd first met her, I'd been a little intimidated. It wasn't every day you met someone with knuckle tattoos. She also seemed like the kind of person who held herself back when she first met you, something I could really understand. Some people might think of Ezra as chilly, but I didn't see her that way, especially when she was with Joy. Just trying to figure out how I can get Everly's mom to give me some of her dip recipes, Joy said. She always jokes that I'll get them in her will, I said. She won't even let me in the kitchen when she's making them. Joy said, frowning. I'll think of something. In the meantime... She trailed off and went to get the chips on the snack table, along with the dips. Would you like a drink? Ezra asked me. Yeah, that would be great. Non-alcoholic. She winked. Coming right up. I headed to the back of the bookstore, which had an open space where the chairs were set up. Lots of people were here already, talking in small groups and already munching on snacks and sampling the drinks. Joy went above and beyond, and usually did themed decorations and drinks and a cake every month. It was a lot of work for a club that was free to join. I said hello to a few other people and found a seat. Ezra returned with my drink and handed it over. Thanks so much, I said, taking it from her. You're welcome. Joy called everyone to order a few minutes later, and my stomach started to churn a little. I told myself that I'd done this before. I knew the process, and I wasn't required to do anything I didn't want to. If all I was up for was sitting in my chair and eating and drinking, and not even saying a word about the book, I could do that, and no one would say a damn thing. Wait just a second, Lane said, looking up from her phone as Joy opened the floor up for initial impressions of the book. We have one more who's just parking her car, Lane said, and a few seconds later the bell above the door jingled as someone walked in. My back was to the front, and I turned around to see who it was. It was the stranger I kissed. Everyone, this is Ryan. Ryan, this is everyone, Lane said as I tried to calm the hell down. Oh, I said accidentally as Ryan walked toward the group. She didn't have a book with her, but a lot of people read ebooks, so they didn't have a book with them. This was the Ryan she was having the party for. The tall, hot stranger? The stranger who had kissed me on Monday. Sorry I'm late, she said, looking around for a spare seat. There were 3 options, including one on my right.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?